Hello once again and welcome to CSIT 208, Multimedia and Web Design. This is our 11th session on CSS and JavaScript demonstration. In the previous session, we were able to see how CSS is defined and how JavaScript works, the very basics. And now, in this session, we are going to have a brief demonstration to show you how you can add CSS and JavaScript to your web page. So welcome to the demonstration of CSS and JavaScript. Now we are going to start with a simple web page like we had before in our 9th session. Now we realized that all the formatting we had to do, we used HTML attributes. Now this time around we are going to use CSS to style our presentation. So we remember that when we use the color Dusty Rose and then we viewed our created web page, we had this presentation. Now what we are going to do is that we are going to take out the BG color attribute of the body tag and then refresh the page. We realize that we have a blank page. Now instead of using the BG color, the best way to specify it is by using Cascading style sheets. So what we are going to do is that we're going to try all three means by which we can add CSS to our HTML. Now the first one was inline. Now with the inline, we add the style attribute to the tag we are working with. So with the body tag, we'll add style to be equal to some declaration. So the declaration we are looking for now is background. So we do background, colon, and then we specify a color. So now let's specify the Dusty Rose color, which is #FF6699. Now let's save this and then refresh our page. And we see that it takes the same effect. Let's try something else. Let's type something beautiful inside our body. University of Ghana is ranked the 7th best university in Africa. Now we remember that during our session on CSS and JavaScript, we mentioned each browser has its own default CSS. So if you fail to specify CSS, it's going to use the defaults of the browser to display or as presentation for your content. This time around, we see that the content is displayed on our web page, but it is not attractive. We talked about fonts in one of our earlier sessions. So what we are going to do now is to try and use fonts that are more readable and that will not keep your visitors away from your website. In doing that, we specify another declaration. Now we do font, which is the property, and then the value we are assigning to it, first of all, we assign the face. So let's choose a font like Tahoma. A size, 13 pixels, and then whether or not it is bold. So we use normal and see how it behaves first. We realize that the font has changed and it looks better now. There are instances where you would want to have a banner on your web page. We can create a simple div tag Now, using the same inline style, we specify the width of the div to be 100% and we give it a corresponding height. So property width, we give 100% as value. You remember that in specifying value, it could be points, it could be pixels, it could be EMs, and it could be percentages. And we give it a height of 200 pixels. And in order to differentiate it from the actual background, let's give it its own background so that it will not inherit the background from the parent body. Let's give it a white background, FF, FF, FF. Now we realize that we have a banner. 200 pixels seems a little too big, so we can reduce it to 100 pixels. Now we realize that there's some padding around the div that we have created. Now to get rid of it, we need to reset. Now we mentioned this in our previous slide that all the browsers come with their default CSS and programmers usually reset these default values. So we give a margin and a padding of 0 to the body. And once it's 0, we do not need to specify units. So now we have it this way. So to even make it more beautiful, I think we should instead have the banner as the rows go, as the dusty rows, sorry, and then the rest of the page would be white. Now we can write something at the base of the div in H1. And I'm sure we all remember what the H1 tag does. So I'll say, welcome to UG-Learning. Now we can do the same thing by using a span, which is another tag. And then specifying a style. Then we specify a font. We could even make it bigger, make it 45. We can give a top padding to our div. Of 20 pixels. and then reduce the total height now to 80. Now all these styling that we are doing them inline. Now I'm going to explain how we can do them both as embedded and then as external. Now let's wrap the text in a paragraph tag. And let's display it. Now, the way we can use embedded style sheet is by creating the tag style inside the head of the HTML file. Now we specify a selector, body, and then the block of declarations. So I'll just take out all the declarations I have as inline style, and then I'll paste it here as declarations for the body in the embedded style sheet. Similarly, I can create a class for my div and I'll call it banner, and inside my embedded CSS I'll do .banner, where the dot signifies that it is going to be applied to an HTML element with class banner. So we realize that if I take this style attribute out and I refresh the page, we still have the same thing. So we have moved from using inline style now to embedded style. There are certain times we might want to include images on our web page. Now we can see from this part, as we mentioned during our sessions, that there are types of images, and this one states here that it's a JPEG image. Now I copy the file name, and after my paragraph, I'll do an image tag. I'll give the source to be the file name dot the extension, and then I'll preview it. And there we have it, the image displaying on the web page. Now, you might want to reduce the size of the image by specifying a width to be equal to 300 pixels and the height to be equal to 300 pixels. So as you can see, the width and the height attributes have affected the size of the image. We are going to have another paragraph right after the image, and we are going to have a different content. This is the best university in Ghana. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to define a new rule, a new CSS rule within our embedded CSS. And it's going to use the tag selector P. And we want to give it a text color. Now remember, the property for text color is color and spelled in American English. Let's give it a very hot color like red. FF0000. Now we realize that it is affecting every single P tag within our web page. That is why we provided two, so you see. Now what you can do is that you can specify a class for one of them. So I'm going to give the second paragraph tag a class of dense. And instead of just doing P as the selector and color of red, I'll do p.dense, meaning that the paragraph with class dense should be affected by this color and red. When I refresh my page, I realize that it is only the second one which has class dense, which is red. The other one reverts back to the default. Now, all these things that we have done, we are going to redo them using external style sheets. So we open a new file. And then I'll just copy the content here and then paste them in an external file. And I'll get rid of the style tag. Now all I need here is, after I save my style sheet document, the external style sheet document I am creating, with extension.css, I'll call it style.css. I'm putting it in the same folder as my HTML. So within my HTML, I can use the tag link rel equal to style sheet. href equal to the location of the style sheet. This time around, since it's in the same folder, we're just going to have style.css. And then the type is going to be text/CSS. Now let's refresh the page and let's see what happens. We have the same thing. So this tells us that there are three ways by which we can include styling to our web page. And the first one we looked at was the inline styling. We went on to look at the embedded CSS styling, and now we are using the external CSS file. And we include it by using this command, the tag link with attribute rel equal to style sheet, attribute href equal to the location or path of our CSS file, and then type equal to text/CSS. We proceed to do a little demonstration on JavaScript. So we maintain only the important points of this page, the structure, and then we get rid of the rest. Now let's create a script tag. As we have learned, is the tag in which we can embed our JavaScript code. And let's do something simple. We do an alert and say this is the message. This is the message. When we refresh our page, we get a prompt. This is the message. Now, the reason for which it displays now is that we have not told it when to display, so it displays at runtime anytime the script tag is run. But there are instances where you want that message or that pop-up box to be displayed when an event occurred. Now, an event is just anything that, or any action that you do on your web page. It could be on a click of a button. So instead of displaying the message when the page loads, I can write a function. Called show message. Now, inside that function, I am going to put the alert. Now, I will refresh my page and it will not be executed. This is because it is contained within a function and it will only be executed once the function has been called. Now, let's do something to call the function. We are going to add a button to our page. And we do so by using the input type This time around, we use button. We give it a value of show message. And now we put a handler for the event. Now we want it to show the message when the button is clicked. So we use the event onClick. Then we supply the name of the function to the event so that it will handle it. So we refresh the web page and we see a button. It doesn't do anything. I can put my mouse over the button, nothing will happen. But when I click on it, then it will display the message. When I click on OK, the message will go again. If I click on show message, it will come back. So the handler that we have done is the onClick. So that means that it is going to trigger the message only when the button is clicked. You could have different purposes. You could do on hover. That means that when the mouse is passed over the button, it should trigger the event. Now, to have a better understanding of the interactivity of JavaScript, we are going to apply certain components that we have learned in the previous video. What we are going to do is that we are going to create text boxes and give them IDs. So let's create 3 simple text boxes and give them labels. So I'll say number 1. Enter value 1. And then I'll give an input type equal to text. ID equal to val1. Then I'll supply a button. And then on click, I want to call show message. Now, when I call show message, I want the content of input tag with ID val1 to be displayed. So what I do is that I declare a variable var, let's say x, to be equal to document dot get element by ID, and the ID will be val1 dot value, and then instead we alert x. So we refresh this page. Now you realize that the button is there, but there's nothing written on it. That should tell us that our value that we did not supply any value to it. So we supply the value show message. So this is what is going to happen. Kofi is a boy. When we click on show message, it's undefined. Please cut. I'm coming. Okay, please let's. So when we do our var x to be equal to document.getElements by ID val1.value, and then we pass whatever is stored in the variable x in the elect function. Anytime we click on show message button, it should call the function show message. And let's see how that works. So we type anything we want in here. We type anything. When we click on show message, it tells us anything. When we change it to Kofi is a boy, it tells us Kofi is a boy. It can add interactivity to your web page. We'll do something very simple with a little arithmetic, and then we'll conclude. So enter value 1. I'll duplicate this for value 2, and then I'll say result. So if you have followed the sessions, you shouldn't be lost with what I'm doing at the moment. I'm just creating 3 text boxes, each of them having their individual IDs. The first one is ID val1, the second one is ID val2, and the third one is ID res. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a function called find sum. Now what find sum is going to do is that it's going to pick the value of the first text box, pick the value of the second text box with ID val2, and then write them the answer into the third text box, which I'll have as document.getElements by ID, res, then dot value to be equal to x plus y. If we refresh this, we put 5 here, we put 7 here. We have to put the trigger find sum in the onClick. So we put 5 here, we put 7 here, and we have 57. The reason we have that is that it is joining the two values, 5 and 7. So to perform arithmetic, we have to pass it. So what we do is that since the value collected from the text boxes is represented as a string, we are going to pass it into an integer by using the JavaScript function parseInt. So we pass into the x value, we pass into the y value, which are the values collected from id val1 and id val2 respectively. And then we use the plus sign, which this time around will do addition, and then we'll put the result in the text box with id res. So we demonstrate. We put 88 and 12 as value 2. When we find the sum, we have 100. Now this brings us to the end of the demonstration of CSS and JavaScript. I hope you enjoyed the session and you have learned a lot. You can find more on www.w3schools.com, where you can learn about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Thank you.